Welcome to Sober Dad Crew, the podcast where we talk about all things sobriety, recovery, parenting, music, tattoos, work, and more. For more information, please visit soberdadcrew.com. All right, my guest this episode is Chris Howe, author of Breaking the Chains of Addiction. Chris, welcome to Sober Dad Crew.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Super excited. We have tons I want to hit on.
Okay.
But first off, how many kids you have?
I have one 10-year-old. He's about to be 11 in February. So probably when this comes out, he'll be 11.
Yeah. So like almost into that weird category of tween.
Yeah.
We weren't tweens.
Yeah.
You and I don't think they like made that up in the interim.
I think so. It's an interesting age for sure. He's my stepchild. He's been in my life since he was 4. So, the bulk of his life has been with me. His father's on the East Coast. He's kind of a FaceTime dad, right? So I get to do all the dad stuff. So I just call him my son because I'm the dad, It's,
100%. I've got 4. So the 2 younger ones, 8 and 13, are technically my stepkids, but they're my kids, It just 100%. And then my older ones are 17 and 21. So I've got I got it all except no babies. I got a vasectomy. I was like, no fucking babies. I don't want any more babies.
Yeah. Interestingly enough. Yeah. I had a vasectomy too. And then met my wife who had this child that was like just an absolute joy, and I never thought I wanted kids. Never. I swore I would never have kids, and certainly not anybody else's kids. And now look at me. I couldn't be happier with the child I've got in my life, and couldn't imagine my life differently without him in it. It wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, I get it, and I just think the universe. People have a lot of names for the universe and the power and the spiritual and all that stuff. But sometimes it puts what we need and what we want, in our path. Like I met my wife during COVID, right? Like, and somehow out of COVID, we carved out this thing and merged families and, which is not always a simple activity.
Yeah.
But, we found our way through with a lot of love and a lot of intentionality and a lot of, grounding for us. She's sober, and that very early on came out. We met online and we were chatting because it was COVID, and we both had something about sobriety on our profiles, and it really just kind of built from there. And you actually took my second question, which was, did you always want to be a dad? And I love that question because not everybody says yes, or in your case, you took sort of a somewhat different path to fatherhood.
Yeah, for sure. I always used to say I wouldn't make a capable dad. I didn't have a typical dad in my life. I had a different type of childhood, and through my years of active addiction, I had such little faith in anything I did because I just kept failing at everything I tried. And it wasn't, that's just how active addiction is. You lose all self-worth. And I could remember multiple times having this conversation and saying, I would not bring a child into this world because I wouldn't want a child to have to grow up with a father like me. And that sort of self-loathing and, self-hatred about myself in active addiction, I didn't think much of it. But now when I, looking back at it now and in the position I'm in now, I think, wow, how sad and how, it's really quite revealing to the depth of my addiction to think that I hated myself that much that I didn't see myself as capable enough to raise a child I thought what a disservice I would be doing to a child. And now, to be able to be in my son's life in the capacity that I am and be present for every moment with a partner. My wife is also sober. She's coming up on 13 years herself. And, this child has never seen her or myself under the influence. He's grown up with sober parents who go to meetings, talk about recovery, are actively working on ourselves, going to therapy, going to treatment, going all different modalities of self-care. And he's seeing that as a child. So, I love this for him because, I know that when he's a teenager going through the ups and downs of teenage years, that he's going to be able to identify, hey, if that becomes a problem for him, or if he is wondering, do I have a problem? Do I need to get help? At least he's going to know where to go, that there is help. It's not scary. And he's going to be familiar with the language of recovery, and that the rooms are not a scary place for a person, that there's truly help there.
Yeah, and I feel like also the world is just chaotic, right? And so to the extent you can is like making home not chaotic, right? And if
Yeah.
you're in a house of mental illness or addiction or any of that, you're like raising kids in chaos, you
It's
know?
that's how I was raised, and it's no place to raise a child in that that household where you feel like you need to be walking on eggshells around your parents or the parental figures in your life. It's a scary place.
So you've talked a little bit about, your time of active addiction. Can you, elaborate on that story a little bit? Let folks kind of know, how it started and how you started to find your way through and out.
Yeah, definitely. So how it started for me, I mean, as I said, I grew up in a household that there was mental illness in the household. My mom had, and still does have really, deep deep mental health issues that she doesn't and didn't address. So I grew up with a parent who from one moment to the next would change personality. So I could have a loving parent 1 minute, go to the bathroom, come back out, and I have somebody throwing things at me and hitting me and calling me all sorts of names under the sun. I mean, it was hypervigilance at all times, hyper alertness, always wondering which version of a parent I was going to get. My father was he was in business. He traveled a lot. So I'm from Canada. I live just sort of in between Niagara Falls and Toronto in Ontario here. So my dad was in the States a lot for business. He was doing land development in he developed in Phoenix, Arizona. So he was there a lot, and different things, but he was gone a lot of the time. So the parent that I did have at home on a regular basis really was unstable, and I lived from the time I can remember um, in anxiety and wishing and wanting for an escape. I always wanted. I would daydream about where I wish I would have been born so I could live a different life and be around different people. And they talk about in the rooms and in recovery, being comfortable in your own skin or not feeling comfortable in your own skin. I don't remember a time in childhood where I did feel comfortable in my own skin, even as a young child, as far as I can remember. So I found it hard to meet friends and keep friends. I'd meet friends and they'd come to my house and something would happen and it would be embarrassing, and there was always like a story around it. So it kind of became this narrative that was quite embarrassing for myself, and I'd always have to start making up lies about it. And there was just things that I wasn't equipped to handle at that time. There was physical abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and just my parents aren't bad people. And even through that, I know that they were doing the best they could with what they knew and what they had. But it was like late 70s, early 80s. People weren't going to therapy. There wasn't much talk about mental health. There wasn't a whole lot of, there wasn't that just wasn't a thing. And so for me, I was left in the care of other people a lot as well. And when I was 7 years old, something happened. I was left in the care of a female caregiver, and there was an incident of sexual abuse. And something I heard always as a child was, the things that went on in my house, they were always, I was always to keep those to myself. It was always told to me that what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors, and make it look good for the neighbors. And, we need everybody to think we are blah, 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 you know, kind of the keeping up with the Joneses type of thing. Right. And so that, that sort of mantra of like, can't talk about it, can't share about it, can't talk about the bad things that are going on, was sort of like drilled into me at a young age. And then when this thing happened, when I was 7 years old, I mean, 7 years old, like I didn't know what that was happening. Like I knew it wasn't right. I knew it didn't feel right, but I didn't know what it was. I was confused. And then I was told again, this sort of like, this is our little, our little secret. And don't talk about this. This is just, we were playing doctor and this kind of thing. Um, and I didn't know why. I guess I didn't know the word for it. I didn't know the label for it, but I did feel shame because something happened to me that I had no control over. And to me, that was the time that I feel my childhood sort of ended. After that time, after that moment, I was holding secrets in that I didn't realize the weight of these secrets because, as I said, as a 7-year-old, you just don't know what that's all about. I would see that person again, and stuff might happen here and there, but it was always like a hush hush thing. It was a very strange relationship with this caregiver. Finally, she stopped coming around, and but I was still left with the guilt, the shame, and the remorse of it. Um, and I had an older cousin who was taking care of me at the time. My brother and I have a younger brother, 2 years younger than me, and my cousin was, I want to say she's like 5 years older than me. And she, in my eyes, her and her friends were the coolest people on the planet. They're all punks and skinheads. They came into my life when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and they played me music, and they introduced me to things that were new and different and exciting. And like when I listened to the music that they were playing me, it was the first time. I mean, I want to say that like listening to like punk rock or hardcore for me was the first time I experienced escape. That thing that I've been wanting for my life up until that point, I felt that in punk rock. Um, and I felt it around these people. I felt safe with them. They were different. They were edgy. They were scary to some people, but to me, they felt like family. They treated me like I don't know, like a family should. And to me, I from that point on, as soon as I heard their music, I was never without headphones. And that was my only. I felt like in punk rock, I could lose myself in the lyrics, in the content of the lyrics, the aggressiveness of the music. It was like all my emotions were coming through my ears like that because I wasn't able to say it. So I would hear it, and I think for me that was the first time that I felt like somebody else out there feels like I feel, but they are strong enough to yell and scream about it. And they could do what I can't do. So to me, like punk rockers were like heroes because they were yelling and screaming what I was feeling. And so that went on for I that's still what I listen to. So
Amen.
yeah, for sure. But that to me, I want to say that music was my first outlet. It was my first escape, and that when I had the music in my ears, that nothing else mattered, nothing hurt, nothing, no emotions. I could drift away. I could lose myself and lose my all my insecurities in music, and I loved that feeling, and it was the feeling of escape. And so as time went on, I would try my first. I had my first real drink at like 13 years old, and that first drink brought me the same feeling that listening to punk rock brought me. It gave me a sense of freedom, a sense of belonging, a sense of self worth. I felt like I was doing what the other people were doing, and they were older people. So I felt acceptance, which I hadn't felt before. Real acceptance. And the first time I drank to complete blackout. I have never known how to drink any differently in my entire life. that night to me was the defining moment of my sort of like formative years and going into to the my teenage years, because that night I got the ultimate escape. And I woke up the next morning and I remembered some of the night, but I crashed at the place that I was partying, and so did everyone else. And the next day I had friends. I had, attention from, females that were a little bit older than me that were saying I was so funny and I was cute and I was this and I was that. And, guys were laughing at stuff that I had done, crazy things, and or said or whatever it was. And to me, it was like, okay, I found my place. This is it for me. I've this is the little niche of society that I belong to now, because I've never felt up to that point. I never felt so wanted and needed and accepted. And like, like most of our stories go, like, we get a taste of that escape. I always say I'm addicted to escape. I'm not addicted to a certain substance. The substances are the route, the vehicle for escape. And when I got access to other substances, I never said no. It was like, slowly, no, sorry, not slowly, quickly, I became, you know, just like like put whatever you can in front of me and I will try it. Don't tell me what I'm supposed to feel. I just want to feel it. And then it turned into, I just don't want to feel. And by the time I was and I'll say this, those first bunch of years of drinking and using, yeah, I was still doing it excessively, but I had people around me. I had good memories. I had people that I thought were really in my corner, that were my real friends, and I felt like, I don't know. It was like the heydays. It was like it was everything felt right until it didn't.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I think you're seeking escape, but also belonging, right? It's an interesting
Yeah, kind
kind
of
of
duality.
combination. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. uh Escape from my current reality, and um the things that I was holding in, and escape from my emotions, but acceptance, socially acceptance, just like a sense of belonging. And also, I loved to be around people, because when I was around people, I didn't have to. My thoughts were quiet. My shame and my guilt and all those emotions were a little quieter than they were normally when I was by myself. Um, so for me, things escalated pretty quickly, and I had tried. I started like using intravenously a few years after that, and that's when things changed, right? Like people, I mean, to me, that was like, I loved that whole like live fast, die young. I like have a what do they say, like have a pretty corpse or whatever, right? Like I thought that was going to be me. That was sort of like, and I romanticized IV drug use and that sort of thing, and like, um I didn't see it the way other people saw it for some reason. Um, but I would notice that like people started keeping their distance from me, and things changed. I just started to feel this like, where I felt acceptance before, I started feeling a lot of people like pulling away from me. It wasn't like I wasn't really welcome at the places that I used to be, sort of the life of the party. And it just, to me, it just felt like it was going downhill very quickly. And it was. I mean, I was like 17 years old. I shouldn't have been doing what I was doing. Um, I was playing in a band and stuff too. So I had, you know, I was out a lot. I had access to, like, we were making a little bit of money. We had free drinks wherever we went. There was always like a hookup wherever we went. It was just, life was chaotic. Um, but it was how I liked it at the time, but I could see that other people were not liking it. I had an opportunity to move away, and I ended up moving to New Zealand, and it was only for a couple months, but I thought I could go and get a break and clean up or change, or I want to say I thought I could go and reinvent myself somewhere else, and this is the other side of the planet. So like, what better place? Nobody knows my name there. Nobody knows me as Chris, the alcoholic or the drug addict or anything like that. I can just be Chris, and I wasn't that. I wasn't that anywhere at home. So I went out there, and you know, as the stories always go, you know, when you try the geographical cure, like you bring yourself and your problems and everything with you. So I brought my baggage with me, and you know, you find all the same people that you would find back home, or that you would be around back home, because you know we haven't changed anything. I didn't work on myself. I just changed the setting. Um, so I came back home. I did finish high school. After that, I ended up moving down to the Caribbean. And I kind of joke about this sometimes. Like, I thought, you know, what a great opportunity. All my friends are going to college and university, and I couldn't do that. Um, I thought, like, I'm going to go down to the Cayman Islands and be and I'll change everything. But I ended up going down there being a bartender on the beach where all the locals came and drank. So same thing, right? Like, I'm surrounded with alcohol and access to drugs, you know, and it's just everywhere I went, it was like chaos, 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 this wake of chaos wherever I went. And I literally, like, I can remember saying out loud, like, what is wrong with this world? Like, everywhere I go, it's bullshit here, bullshit there. It's like chaos everywhere I go. Like, what's wrong with this world? And I could never look at like what's wrong with me. It wasn't my fault, you know?
It's everybody else.
Yeah. And it was like, you know, and like most people in active addiction are, like, we're great at manipulating our stories, manipulating ourselves in our own minds to tell ourselves these narratives that make it okay to do what we do and make it everybody else's fault. And, you know, the last person we look at is ourselves. Um, so I moved around a whole bunch. And as I was moving around, you know, things were starting to happen that were, you know, I'll just say my habits were getting very out of control, very unmanageable. I was having to sell all my stuff, and you know, at one point I didn't have a place to live, and just sort of like couch surfing and, you know, staying where I could. And um, it was it was it was tough. It was tough for quite a while. I ended up coming back home after moving around to a few different cities, and I worked in a machine shop building like car parts. And to me, it was a perfect job. I worked steady nights, and I was able to go in and set up my machine, and then we'd go to the parking lot, and I was working midnight, so there was no management around, and we just party. It was a party every time I went to work. And I did notice this one thing though, like every day on shift change, this big guy with tattoos all up and down his arms. He had a big giant beard, drove a motorcycle. Like, he'd just come and stare at me with, like, the only way I can describe this stare is like the look of a disapproving father. And it was this look where I didn't know if I said something wrong to this guy. I must have pissed him off when I was drunk or blacked out or something. And I thought I was going to catch a beating. I didn't know what his problem was with me, but he would just look at me and I couldn't figure it out. Finally, one day, I'm in the bathroom getting my stuff ready to leave. I'm I'm at the urinal. I zip up, turn around, and the guy's standing there. And I'm like, oh shit, there's no cameras here. This is I'm about to get it, right? Um, Whatever I've done to piss this guy off, I'm getting the payback now. And he opened his mouth, and something that really, really, I mean, it shocked the hell out of me. He opened his mouth, and his voice was so calming, and it was so gentle, and it just very much did not match his exterior, like his you know, his presentation was so different than his actual demeanor. And he said, and he was very short, and he was very sincere, but he said, listen kid, I've been watching you, and if you ever get sick and tired of being sick and tired, you can give me a call and I can help you. And he gave me a piece of paper with his name and his number on it, and like, I had no idea what he meant. That's all he said. He didn't say anything but that. he just turned around and walked away. And I don't know. A guy gave me his name and his number in the bathroom. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I didn't. I was just happy I didn't get my ass kicked, but I didn't know if I was just asked out on a date or what. But for some reason, I didn't throw that number out, and I believe it's because of his demeanor and the way he presented and he spoke to me. There was something very sincere, genuine, and calming about him. And a few months later, I found myself kind of at one of my rock bottoms, and I was in a bar. Drug dealers were not answering my phone calls anymore. I was into them. I was in way too much debt with dealers. I was broke. I was running a bar tab up that I couldn't pay for, and I was flipping through my wallet for like anything. Maybe there's like a credit card I had stolen or something that I could like offer as collateral or something to get, to pay my bar tab. And his number came up, his like that piece of paper came out of my wallet. And I, I had no friends that were answering the phone. No dealers were answering the phone. The only person that was talking to me at the time was the bartender. And that's because he had to. So I thought, I'll call him. His name was Terry. I called him and I said, Terry, it's Chris from work. You said if I get sick and tired of being sick and tired, I could call you. I think I'm there. I don't know what you can do for me, but I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And he said, where are you? Stay there. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Came down, picked me up. And I think at that time, all I really wanted was somebody to pay my bar tab. And, and, he did. So he did, he said, okay, kid, like he was very like, he said, what do you owe? And I told him, and he said, do you got any money? And I said, nothing. And he said, okay, I'll pay your bar tab, but there's a coffee shop across the street. I'll pay your bar tab, but it's conditional. You got to come across, sit with me for an hour. I'll buy you a coffee and a sandwich. And I want to talk to you for an hour. And I'll pay your bar tab. So all I heard was I'll pay your bar tab. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Right. So I went across and that was a 12-step call for him. Like he told me his story and that he had been sober for, at that time, it was 18 years. And, I was amazed. And when he told me what was possible in sobriety, I couldn't, no, I don't want to say I couldn't believe. I chose not to believe him. I there was something in me that thought he's got to be full of shit. There's no way he can be this happy and he's not drinking or using or whatever. Like, what kind of an existence is that? And I really, all my friends that's what we were doing. And I didn't know differently, really. But I agreed to go to a meeting with him, and I went to a meeting the next day. And it was such a strange feeling for me to walk in. I was 22 years old at the time. I feel like I was one of the youngest people in the rooms. This is like, I want to say like, this is like late 90s, maybe the year 2000. And people were laughing and joking and hugging each other. And I couldn't figure out, why are these people so happy? Like, they're sober. Like, how could they be having that much fun sober? Like, this is just, they gotta be full of shit. And I listened to the stories, and I came back to a couple more meetings, and I'll say this about that time. This man saved my life. He brought me to my first meeting. I didn't stay sober, but I went to those meetings, and he introduced me to those rooms. And what I would say every time is, I'm not like these people. So I didn't go in and try to relate to people. I went in comparing myself to people. And I said, oh, homeless, haven't, like, yeah, I've always had a couch to stay on. Eating out of a garbage can, no, I could scrounge together enough for a slice of pizza. Guys doing prison time, this, that, the other thing. No, not, broken up marriages. No, not me. I listened to these stories, and I picked out everything that would make me different. And at the time, what I thought was better than. And this guy, Terry, he just kept saying, well, that's just not you yet. You keep doing what you're doing, and I promise you, every one of those things will happen to you. I promise you. And of course, me being a 22-year-old kid, just egotistical. And I had a, maybe I'd been clean for 3 4 days, and or a week, whatever it was at the time. But I felt like there was some life back in me, and I was like, no, 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 I could do this like regular people. Watch me. And he did what he was supposed to do. He didn't tell me, like, he said, I promise you, things are not going to go your way. They'll go back to the way that they were, and they'll get worse, and they'll get worse, and they'll get worse. And that's exactly what happened. And I could tell a real long story. And I'll just say, from the ages of 22 to 32, I came into the rooms and relapsed. um, I estimate between 50 and 60 times. And I always came into the rooms for various reasons, because some of those things, actually a lot of those things that I said would never happen to me, started to happen to me. So, I get in trouble with the cops. Well, I'm no, no, no. I'm going to NA, or I'm going to AA, and I'm going to, I'm doing this day treatment, and I'm doing it was to appease other people, or to get the heat off me, or a girl that I was dating said, I can't be with you like this. And I'd say, no, 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 watch, I'm going to work on myself. I'll change. I can do this. I'll be different. But it was never for myself. It was never because I was desperate for that change. And I feel like I always had an exit strategy, or an exit plan rather. Um, I was going into those rooms, and I was doing what I see people do at times, or I guess sometimes that people are doing, and I get it now. But I was taking up a seat, and I wasn't sharing. I wasn't joining a home group. I wasn't getting a sponsor. I wasn't doing any of the do's that they tell us in the rooms. Um, and I would like look at the slogans on the wall, and like, that bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. You think that's gonna, like, how is that going to change my life? That's not going to save me. It was, I was so negative, so pessimistic about the whole thing. And in that meantime, I ended up, in one of the times that I got clean, I I got hired as a firefighter in a town just outside of my own. And I found that culture in the fire department was also very, um, there's a lot of substance abuse in first responders careers, just because we see and deal with things that most people don't have to see or deal with. And a lot of the old school guys, and I think the sort of the culture around the fire hall is like, okay, don't talk about it, but drink about it. So we go to the bar after a hard shift, not, hey, talk about how did that make me feel. And so things started getting like, I had those work stressors, and yeah, those stressors, and the things that I was seeing, those traumas that I wasn't acknowledging. I was just drinking harder, using harder, and I was living this very strange life of like, I'd put my uniform on, and I try to be this upstanding citizen. And the second I got off work, I was like jumping from crack houses and shooting galleries and different bars and this and that and around. I was a criminal. I was around criminals. I was like living this dual lifestyle that just really didn't make sense at all. And of course, sort of like worlds would collide eventually. Um, and every time something happened, again, I'll say I used the rooms of recovery as my little escape to tell people everything's going to be okay. It was almost I used that as the, don't get pissed off at me. I got a problem, but look, I'm going to do something about it. And uh, I I got to a point in my life where I felt like I had let myself and my family and my community, my friends, everybody who was exposed to anything in my life, I felt like I had let down. I had no faith in myself. Um, I had no, I was suicidal. I attempted 3 times. And I I became one of those drug addicts and alcoholics who would like shut all my window, like lock all my doors, close all my windows, and just set up shop in my house, in my basement for days on end. And the only person who was coming anywhere near my house was either somebody to use with or a dealer. And I hated myself. Like it was like it was a point of I hate myself so much. I don't want to be alive, but I can't. I really like I don't want to take myself out, but I can't keep living like this. And one day I is actually so it was New Year's of so 2010 2011. um I went out and I tried to be social for New Year's, and I drank and drank and drank, and I used and I used and I used. And I don't know, I'm gonna say, like, I was up for probably 48 hours, and nothing worked. I never felt drunk. I never felt high. And to me, it was the most frustrating moment of my sort of like drinking and using career, because I felt like, oh my God, my medicine isn't working anymore. I can't get the escape that I'm craving. And so I passed out for a couple hours, and I woke up and I said, there's no way. I just cannot live like this anymore. Um, and I thought I had the intention of that fourth and final attempt at suicide, and I was pretty convinced that that was my only way out. I just knew I couldn't live like that any longer. And I was writing down a list of ways that I could take myself out. And and every time I wrote something down, I felt like it was wrong. And I was looking at, like, what is the softest, easiest way to just exit this world. And I also didn't want anyone to find me. And one of the things, I live very close to Niagara Falls. That was my thing. I'll go over the falls. Nobody finds me. Nobody, I didn't want to affect anybody. I didn't want to hurt anybody anymore, you know, and somebody finding me like that would hurt them. And in that chaos of writing things and feeling all these feelings, I I don't know if this is a spiritual experience or what this was, but I just got hit with this just massive wave of emotions. And as I said, I went in, I was using the rooms of recovery and kind of balking at all the terms that they would use and the things. And I just remembered how everybody looked. I remember how I felt when I went in there for the first time, that, like, why are all these people happy? Um, I remembered the slogans that I would scoff at. And it all just kind of hit me at once that, like, that is where I belong. I am one of them. And why am I pushing back so hard on being one of those happy, joyous, and free people? Why am I so badly hanging on to this awful life that I'm living in the and being exposed to these people who have real lasting recovery in their life? Why can't I accept it for myself? And I dropped the pen. I stopped writing ways to commit suicide, and I said, that's not the way. Yes, I can't live this way any longer, but I have to go back to that room where people were happy, and I got to see what it's all about. And I went into the room that I had gone into for so many years, picking up desire chips, and white key tags, and it was just different. I want to say I finally went in with an attitude and of true surrender. It looked different. It felt different. It sounded different. I was like, I walked through the door and somebody shook my hand and I just broke down and started crying. And I hadn't done that in a lot of years. And I told them, this is what I was about to do just a few hours ago, and I'm here instead. And people, I thought people would, because I'd heard always, you don't talk about that stuff. I thought people would, like, step away from me or think, oh my God, this guy's crazy. Instead, they got close to me and they gathered around me and they said, man, I know exactly how you feel. I've been there too. And we're here for you. And you don't have to do any of that alone anymore. And to me, that was that same feeling that the first drink gave me, or that acceptance and that warmth of family. And I felt it from these people. And I and I kind of joke about this. it was a discussion meeting, and it was a smaller meeting. And I was bawling my eyes out. But once I started talking about things that had happened to me, I just didn't shut up. And I turned this discussion meeting into the Chris Howe speaker meeting.
Chris Howe show.
Yeah, exactly. And these kind people were so compassionate, and they saw in me the desperation that they just let me speak, because I know that they thought, if he doesn't say it here, where else is he going to say it? And that was the first day of recovery as I know it today, and that's, just a little over 14 years ago. My life changed drastically from there. Um, I got a taste of recovery, like real recovery. And so some different things that I did is, um, well, the main difference is I listened to people, and I didn't try to run the show myself. And I took the suggestions as, um, I know they're suggestions, but I took them as rules. And so when people said get a home group, get a sponsor, get active, be of service, that was like a life or death thing. So I treated the early days of my recovery, and still to this day, as like truly life or death, because in those moments I was ready to, and had I not done it myself, if I were to keep doing what I was doing, I don't believe that I would still be here today to talk about this, because I've seen it with so many of my friends and my people that I used to use with, and that didn't get the opportunity to walk through the rooms and really change their life, and they're no longer with us. And you know that's a thing that keeps me going. But um you know I took every opportunity to work with sponsors, go to different types of meetings. I went to treatment. I was going to like a day treatment place, like an outpatient as well. um, I took the attitude um, of like sort of the 12 steps into basically everything in my life, and at work, where I had let so many people down and been such a terrible employee, and coworker. And I had to go in and and relearn all those basic things. And I basically I treated my life as if I was a child again, and I had to build back up from nothing, because truly, I will say, like, emotionally, I had nothing. And so I had to learn how to feel again. I had to learn how to cope. I had to learn how to um, get along with people. I had to learn how to talk to people that didn't have drug habits. Um, I had to learn how to grocery shop, like the simple things in life, right? Like, it's stuff that you don't think about when you're in it. And paying bills, doing all that like adult stuff. But to me, that was some of the most fun I ever had in my life, is learning that as a 32-year-old man, learning how to, like, truly just learning how to live. Um, and then, you know, of course, I didn't. There's nothing about my health that I cared about in active addiction, or else I wouldn't be in active addiction. But I realized, if I'm getting my mind right, I need to get my body right. I need to get this like holistic, um, like take care of mind, body, and soul. And I something that well, I had a therapist say to me, what gave you? Because she said, "What are your hobbies?" And I said, "Well, I'm really good at drinking and doing drugs." And she's like, "I don't think you're actually that good at it, or else you wouldn't be in recovery."
Nobody's actually good at that.
Yeah.
It's not a good hobby. It's crocheting, maybe.
Yeah. And so she said, "Well, before you started drinking and using drugs, what did you do?" And I said, "Well, I really love listening to records. I played a guitar, um, and I rode a skateboard, and I did a little bit of boxing." And she's like, "Okay, this is your assignment. Pick a few of those things and go do it." And so I went and bought a skateboard, a guitar, and some boxing gloves, and a record player. And you know, skating at 32 when you hadn't done it in 20 years, it, uh, it lasted a few days,
I
and
had tried to teach myself in my 40s
yeah,
and fucked up my shoulder. So, yeah.
you know how it goes. Like,
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm down. And my kids were like, like, I'm like, no, I'm too
Yeah.
old for this.
Well, you fall differently as a man than you do as a child. You don't have
You
those rubber
do.
bones anymore.
Yeah. Talk about recovery.
Yeah. So what really so of course like music became a big thing in my life again, and it always was, but I started boxing again, and I was like, this is it. This to me brought me all the excitement, danger, um like the rush, the adrenaline of what I was doing, but in a healthy way. And then I started to I somebody had suggested I try Muay Thai, and I I have a Thai aunt who had always talked about it to me, and and so I went and found a Muay Thai club, and I tried it and I loved it, and then I started making trips to Thailand, and I just got fully immersed in it, and to me that that physical component of recovery really did a lot, and not only because yes, okay, my body changed and I was happy with that, and I was able to like break um, self-imposed barriers that I thought I had physically, but also it brought me something that I wasn't aware that I actually needed, but I needed to be around healthy people that weren't recovering alcoholics or addicts. And those are the people I found through Muay Thai, because they were people that were, kind of like-minded, but there's not too much room for, if you're fighting and or training with any kind of purpose, there's not room for abusing your body. And so I found a real nice group of healthy people that were not just talking. You probably relate to this. You get around too many people talking recovery stuff all the time, and then it becomes its own language. And then you go to talk to somebody at the supermarket, and you don't. That's not the way regular people talk. That's not the way sort of normies talk with each other, right?
Yeah, it's funny because and I know from looking on your social media stuff, like talking about recovering out loud, right? It's super important, but also I am more than,
Yes.
the problems and my struggles, right? And
Yeah.
and I think the moment I hit that
Hmm.
was when there was no turning back.
Yeah.
When, my doctor recently, because my mom's had some health stuff, and it also the first doctor I've ever had who actually asks me how I'm doing in regards to sobriety. And
Hmm.
I'm like, Heather, like, I really am never fucking tempted.
Yeah.
Like, my marriage is built on a foundation of like sobriety, integrity, and love. Like, it's not a thing. Like, my life is fucking beautiful now. And I cannot picture like ever turning off that path. And certainly being in a marriage where we're both sober and both committed to that, it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's huge. You're absolutely right. And that is a big thing, that yes, you're not just your recovery. You're not just, yeah, your recovery is a big story, a big part of your story. Your active addiction is a big part of your story, but what next? What, like, that's what I ask people in early recovery. Like, okay, what's next? Like, what's the plan? I have a friend who does like recovery coaching and stuff like that, and that's his big thing, is goal setting, and sort of answering that question of like, okay, you're sober now, but where are we going from here? You know,
Yeah,
and
I always say to people, where do you want to be in 5 years?
Mhm,
Now, how are you going to get there?
exactly,
And it's usually one small step at a time. But
yeah,
it's like, and if they can't do five, where do you want to be next year?
yeah,
But like, what's the future thing? And then part two is, what are your steps to
yeah,
like go there? Because like, we all know the people are like, I'm going to be this, and they don't do they don't do it. I'm
yeah,
going to be a writer. Do you write every day? No. Well, it's
right,
going to be hard to be a writer.
yeah. Well, that's it, right? And I think that just comes down to setting small and attainable goals along the way, and all with that end. Not I don't want to say even end goal, but with that bigger goal ahead of you. That like by this time next year, I'm going to have written 12 chapters of my book. That means I gotta write X amount of pages per week, have this much done per, these small attainable goals get you to that bigger goal. And that goes the same with, with recovery. As we do it one day at a time, and eventually we hit those milestone markers and we're like, oh my God, how did that happen? But it happened one day at a time. And for me, and you spoke about your wife being clean and sober as well. I met my wife, and my son, in at a time in my life when I thought I was pretty content with. I thought I'd be good on my own, and looking back at that now, like, you can probably relate to this, that having a partner at home that is also in recovery is, like, invaluable, as far as, like, the constant support, 24/7 support that you have at all times with somebody who truly knows you. And, like, I don't know if it's like this for you, but, like, my wife knows me better than I know myself. So she'll know my next move before I'm about to make it. And she'll call me on it, and she'll be like, okay, now I know you want to do this, but don't do this. Like,
Yeah.
I know what you're going to do, but here's what's going to happen if you do that. So, she really keeps me, she really keeps me in check that way, in recovery and in life in general. She's an amazing person. And, we've got so much in common, but also amazing differences that we can help build, build off of each other's experience.
Yeah. One more recovery thing before we shift just a little bit.
Sure.
You're involved in refuge recovery.
Yes.
And a lot of times some traditional recovery stuff can kind of turn the God thing.
Yeah.
Can kind of turn people off. So, can you talk about that, side of the program?
For sure. Okay. So I always will say this, that the 12-step rooms absolutely saved my life. And I'll always credit them with that. And I still go to 12-step meetings. I love it. I love everything that it offers, and I believe in it. The theistic sort of, like, piece of that always kind of, like, puzzled me. And I was one of those people that always had to be told that, like, oh, you can make your higher power, it can be this pencil here, that could be, it's just not you, and it's just something, or you could be somebody else. And I never knew sort of, like, where I fit in that, or where I'd hear people talk about their higher power, or and I just didn't, I could never label mine. I could never, I understood that, I would just use my sponsor as, the sounding board. And I'd say that you can be my higher power. When I found refuge was, like, I want to say 6 or 8 years. So yeah, maybe 8 years into recovery. And to me, it was something tangible. So, using Buddhist principles, and sort of blending that with sort of the with a recovery. Sorry, using the Buddhist principles and a recovery program in unison. So, like, um, a recovery program that's based in mindfulness, meditation, and, like, present time awareness. To me, okay, so, like, I can there meditation, something I can do, something I can immediately feel, something I can to me, that's within my reach. It's not believing in something. It's like, no, I can feel this working, and I can feel this is an act that I'm actually doing. To me, that really helped answer a lot of questions. And then I started reading more, just about Buddhism, and I'd spent so much time in Thailand as well, around monks, and I was just kind of drawn to it. And it just, to me, principles of like, just how to live a good life and not harm others, be compassionate to others, having, like, as I said, that, like, present time awareness, to not get carried away in, stressing about the future, or worrying about the past, and just always being present in the moment. To me, it checked all the boxes. And then the community in recovery, or sorry, in refuge. I mean, uh, I became friends with Noah, and his story is very similar to a lot of ours, and it's, a lot of old punk rockers and like just different kind of people that understand the same story. I guess our story is a little bit more similar than some of the people in 12 step rooms to me, and that so I found it more the community to be very much more accepting as well. I also really like the fact that the refuge does not they don't discriminate about what the substance is. So they don't say, oh, you can't talk about drugs in this alcoholics meeting. You can't talk about you belong in the other meeting. It's all are welcome. So even if you're addicted to social media, you're addicted to your own mind, process addictions like sex addiction, sex and love, gambling, all that stuff, everyone's welcome. And I love that because I've always thought recovery is recovery. It takes the same shape no matter what the substance or the thing is. And I spoke about it earlier, we're all just using a something as an escape. So recovery from anything, whether it's substances or behaviors, it has to look the same.
Well, and a lot of times people will shift from substance to behavior, right?
Yeah.
They'll stop drinking, but they'll start like being really promiscuous. And for those that don't know, we're talking about Noah Levine. His book Dharma Punks was really like pivotal for me, and what's his other one, Against the Stream.
Against the Stream, yeah.
Those are really worth a read and an exploration for folks. And, Dharma Punks really tells his kind of story, and it's really compelling. And his father was this really famous, like Buddhist teacher, and visiting him in prison. And, it's just, it's a good and like important alternative or complementary kind of worldview, I think, that can be really helpful to people.
Yeah. And the real nice thing about it is like, going to other fellowships is not discouraged. So like it's encouraged to, also go to 12 step meetings. This isn't like the only way and I know that there's nowhere in AA or NA or CA that says this is the only way, but
it's not like a non-compete.
Right. Well, in my experience, the people in the rooms, they in the 12 step rooms almost have that sort of like, well, if you're not here with us, you're going to die. And, where Refuge says, this is not the only way. This is a complement to your recovery, or this can be your recovery, but also complement it with other modalities. So it's just a very all-inclusive, I just find the fellowship so amazing, and I've connected and become friends with so many amazing people through it.
Yeah, and let's, as we start to wrap up, talk about somewhat happier topics. What was your first tattoo? So people can't, like, I'm pretty tattooed. Chris is very tattooed.
Yeah. My first tattoo, it's the only color tattoo I have on my body. I got it when I was like 15, and it's on my right sort of like thigh, and it's a Canadian flag with the name of the band that I was playing in at the time. And because of course I thought at 15 years old that's what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life.
Almost like the black flag.
Yeah,
but it's the Canadian, cool. The Canadian black flag, the red flag.
That's right. Yeah, and here's the thing: tattoos. I also, I mean, I grew up around people that had them. My grandfather was somebody I really looked up to. He had a lot of tattoos as well. His were old, like wartime Navy tattoos, and so I got a lot of tattoos because I looked up. I thought that was like a I don't know. When I first started getting them, I thought that's what made a person strong and manly and all this stuff. But I also thought, like, I mean, back then it was you have tattoos, you are on the you're on the outer edge of society, and you're one of the few.
I'm not going to get a straight job because I just got tatted.
Exactly. And now, I mean, today is you can't go to a Starbucks drive-through and not get served by like a person who's got full sleeves and neck tattoos at 18 years old. It
Which
it's
PSA, um, just take your time. I've got many, but
yeah, it's
I've done one cover up in my time as I had a kind of classic 50s style cocktail waitress on my
okay.
leg.
Yeah.
Um, and it was by a guy who had done a lot of work on me, who then had fallen, unbeknownst to me, had fallen into addiction. So this was not a great tattoo, and as
Oh, okay.
others were. And then I had a daughter,
Hmm.
and then I'm sober. I'm like, this is like not my. So I have a big fucking anchor there now,
Okay.
which is just
Cool.
much more, in telling. But it is good. You can get them covered up, but it's hard to
Yeah.
sort of picture myself without them now too. Like
Yeah. I think the same. And I have like I'll say like I have some cover-ups of cover-ups on my body. I have like a few layers of tattoos.
triple decker.
Yeah, some on some spots, yeah. And yeah, I regret a lot of old tattoos that when I was into things that or I thought I was into things that I'd be into for the rest of my but I back then I loved the look of it. I loved the feel of it, but I liked the danger and the taboo of it all. And all that stuff I think today is lost. My wife and I also own a tattoo shop here, and my wife is a tattoo artist, a phenomenal one. And I always joke about it because I got like my whole body covered in tattoos before I met the woman who would do way better tattoos for free. So I got
Yeah.
like, I got like very, very limited spots where she can tattoo me, but she's done some cover ups on me and what she's really done some great things at like, taking old tattoos that are like 30 years old and bringing them back to life. And so that's kind of cool. Just to see her process that way. And I still love them. I still think they're great. I just wish that it still made you a little more unique. And I think I have like I said, I had a younger brother, and he's got no tattoos. And every time he says, "Oh, do you think I should get one?" I'm like, "No, always have none." Because when we go to the beach, when we're like 75 and we go to the beach somewhere, you're gonna look like the weirdo that has all that bare skin. Like you're gonna be the interesting looking one that has no tattoos. I think because it's almost like to the point where you're different if you have none.
Yeah, the singer in City and Color, I saw an interview with him, and he was like, "Yeah, I kind of like regret it a little bit, but he did it. He's like, I'm getting that neck tattoo because music career or bust. There's no turning back."
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean,
He's actually
I work in a really like professional office, but
yeah,
it's an architecture firm, so it's like a pretty creative industry. And
yeah,
I show mine. It's not a big deal, and I know like there's probably times I don't, and I'm a big boy, and I know sort of when to roll with that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to get a lot of flack for them with the fire department. People would say, "Oh, you're a disgrace to the uniform," and that's and that was when I first got the job, and it was really quite interesting because I'd go to calls. We go to like medical calls, fire calls, car accidents, everything, and there would be older guys that had those tattoos like my grandfather had, and they'd look at me and they'd look and they'd say like, "Oh," they'd be having chest pain and they'd say, "Oh, it's a 9 out of 10 on the pain scale." And then they start looking at my tattoos and they roll up their sleeve and they say, "Look at this. I got this in the war." And,
Yeah.
after talking to them for a couple minutes, they're like, I said, "What's your pain? What's your pain level now?" And they say, "Oh, a 4 out of 10." So it became actually like it ended up being a positive to me with my work.
And also, if you're gonna like come into my house, which is burning, and try and save my house and my family, I could give a flying fuck if you had tattoos.
Yeah.
Because, like, firefighters, man, I have a lot of admiration. I actually live in upstate New York. We're not like super duper far. I'm kind of a half an hour north of Ithaca, and
Okay.
so we have volunteer firefighters, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, that's some like badass volunteer work, like
Yeah.
respect
Yeah.
to that as a and then I don't know if they have that in Canada, but there's like the smaller communities in the US, the
Mhm.
firefighters are mostly volunteers. I
We do
mean,
have it. Yeah. Yeah, I've never done it. I've always been a career firefighter, but yeah, it's a volunteers do the exact same job for, as a
For
volunteer.
free.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a big, that is a big deal. It's you put your life on the line at times, and that's just to serve your community. So that is a real big deal.
Yeah, we're in the US now, we're obviously with what's going on in Los Angeles, we're
Yeah,
thinking a lot about, you know, firefighters. Now there's firefighters from all over the world
yeah,
coming, right? That the video of the South African firefighters, like, amazing, like,
yeah.
and like, does the US even deserve that right now? I know we're kind of like being assholes as a country, but
Yeah.
it shows community and like doing the right thing and all that. And that's really, really
Well,
important.
yeah, for sure. I think that is a big deal for anybody, not just us in recovery. That service piece is a huge thing, and like service and community are, this is just to kind of like take those two concepts into also recovery. It's like that's what keeps me clean and sober today. So like I also so I do a lot of work with like I used to do a lot of public speaking for treatment centers, and then a couple years ago I opened a treatment center with a friend. That didn't work really. I mean, the treatment center is still open. The friendship kind of fizzled, well, not fizzled out. We had a there was a severance of the friendship, and I'm no longer part of that treatment center anymore. But my wife and I are actually opening a new one in a couple months. We're actually renovating the building now, and to me, those two things, like service, being of service, and community, those are the two things that are like absolute pillars in my life. Because if I don't have those things, I've got really nothing, right? Like if I can't be of service to, to my brothers and sisters out here, anybody, right, like that's in need of help. And I think that's why, you spoke about online, like through social media, that recovering out loud, and that just sort of like talking about it. I mean, oftentimes, yeah, I mean, it can get exhausting to just hear people talk about recovery. It's for that person who truly is desperately in need, and they see or hear somebody. It could be just on an Instagram post, saying what they need to hear in that moment. And that might be a light. That's where the light bulb moment, where it's sort of like, okay, somebody else can do it. So I can, so it is possible, and I can do it. And I'm sure you get messages all the time from people that are like, I haven't told anybody, and I don't know you, but I feel safe. And how do I do this? And to get those messages and be somebody who can answer that and feel confident that I'm pointing somebody in the right direction, and to be of service, to be a small part in a major change in somebody's life, is the most gratifying, and like that is the most rewarding thing I could ever do in my life. And I'm so fortunate to get to do that on a daily basis, to answer those messages from people that say, I don't know what else to do, and I read your posts, or I saw your thing, or I saw you speak at this event, and you said you could do it, and I need to know how, so speaking up about it and being recovering out loud is the way that it's that sort of attraction rather than promotion piece that they talk about in the rooms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. All right. Last question.
Okay.
Do you ever see that guy, Terry?
Mm. I know you didn't want to keep it doom. I know you didn't want to keep it like dark, but
Well, no, it's all good. I mean,
so here's the no. Actually, it's a wonderful story. So it ended up, and it kind of goes along with some of the stuff we were talking about. But Terry ended up being the father of one of my tattoo artists, and Terry saw me come in and out of the rooms and bounce around, and relapse after relapse, and he retired, and he moved out to the East Coast, and I'd go and get tattooed by his son Justin, and he'd always tell me about his dad, and I'd ask about him, and then when I got clean and sober, and I had like 3 or 4 months, I was getting tattooed on a pretty regular basis every couple of weeks at that point, and Justin used to say, like, I told my dad about how well you're doing, and he's proud of you. And and I was like, man, I'd love to see him again. And but he was out on the East Coast, and I didn't think that it would be possible. And one day I had a tattoo appointment, and I walked into the shop, and Terry was standing there. And I was like 5 months sober at the time. And he said, and we sat down and we talked, and he's like, I cannot believe that I'm hearing this stuff from you. He's like, every time you spoke to me in the past, you were so full of shit. You lied to me.
Yeah.
You thought you were tricking me. And I was just like rolling my eyes at you. Like, look at this guy go. I've seen it a billion times. And he's like, this is the first time I've really seen you speak recovery and feel you like exude recovery. And he goes, what are you doing tomorrow? And I said, well, I've got 7 days off work, so I've got nothing planned. And he's like, good. I'm picking you up at 5:30. I'm driving you out to, he lives in a place called Nova Scotia on the East Coast. And I was like, well, okay, I guess I can't say no. I got 7 days free. So he picks me up in his pickup truck, me, him, and his dog. It's like perfect. It's like a country song. And we drive like 18 hours out to the East Coast at like 5 months sober. We talked recovery the entire time. We traded driving. It was like, to me, that was such a gift in early recovery, to reconnect with him and be able to go out there and spend all that time in a car talking recovery. And he said, okay, I want to bring you to my home group. And he brought me to his home group out there, and he goes, okay, it's a pretty big group, but like, you'll like it. It's a friendly room. And I said, okay, good. And so we're walking into the room, and I said, oh, by the way, what is this? A speaker or a discussion meeting? And he goes, oh, it's a speaker meeting. And I said, oh, that's good. That's good. He goes, and I said, I love the speaker meetings because, you just kind of just get to chill and listen. And he's like, okay, by the way, you're the speaker. And then he and this guy, he's amazing. Right. And so at 5 months, he had me up speaking from the podium, which I don't know that anybody else would have ever asked me that, but he wanted to. I feel like he was proud of the direction I was going, and he wanted to give me that opportunity somewhere that wasn't at home. So I did that. I spent 5 days with him, and then I flew home, and that was the last time I saw him. And he died, unfortunately, passed away from cancer. And he's the person that I credit with my life today, because he brought me. He did that 12-step call, and he was that guy who answered the phone when nobody else would. And like, to be able to connect with him and spend that 5 like honestly magical days with him, priceless, absolutely priceless. And so he's in my memories every day. And he's a person I talk about quite a bit. And around here, he's very well known in the recovery circles.
Yeah, there are people like that in every community.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. This was awesome. I super appreciate it. And your openness is really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking me. It's really great to connect, and I've really enjoyed also like following along with your Instagram, and you had my friend Tristan on, and I really loved that interview too. He's a fantastic guy. So it's great to always expand your recovery network through mutual friends and stuff like that. So I hope we keep in touch for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening. Sober Dad Crew is a DIY project by Stephen Kimball, who writes, edits, and produces the show. To support the show, please review it where you listen to podcasts, or visit soberdadcrew.com to buy some merchandise or make a donation.